Big round of applause for Jeff Partridge.
So when I first knew I was going to speak today, I considered multiple topics, as Patrick said. 2D3, Vice President of Operations for 2D3 Sensing. We deal in commercial video, commercial and defense video and metadata technology. I'm on the board of AUVSI, second term. I'm also on the board of the Foundation for Educational Outreach. Furthermore, I have a lot of involvement. I know a lot of you in this room, and there's a lot of directions that I could go. But I decided to take a little bit of a non-traditional direction in terms of where I may have gone in the past, showing my company's technology. There's a lot of you here that are presenting and showing that side. In my involvement in various roles, particularly in AUVSI, and especially today, I have long asked the question, why such public concern over commercial transition of unmanned systems? And I figured I'd take this opportunity with this presentation slot to delve in a little bit further myself. And I discovered many interesting historical trends that I would like to share with you. So here, you don't have to search long on various news websites, be it Fox, CNN, whatnot, to find yourself a nice map of all the states that have either UAS legislation being introduced, enacted, or adopted. I believe that the current number is 42. It changes on a daily basis these days. This is a little bit older information. I couldn't find the map that somebody had posted an article yesterday. But I fundamentally wanted to dig in and look at these laws and these bills that are being enacted and what makes them up and what is going to prevent going forward all of you to adopt your various solutions to commercial markets. And it was pretty interesting what's found. We've all heard about search warrants and surveillance and privacy and weaponized drones, and we can very quickly say, it's very easy to say, that the defense perception is what causes all of this. That the average person believes that the only application for drones is killing machines. We know that we all know that that's not true, and it is unfounded. But if you delve a little bit deeper and looking at these things, perhaps it's not necessarily about defense, but maintaining the status quo. And drones represent a disruptive technology, something that people don't want to handle, that they're not prepared to handle. And looking down this list, gave some indicators. So I dug a little bit deeper, and I wanted to see if I could get any historical perspective, particularly as we see things like this article that you might have saw this week about the town that was trying to get hunting licenses for drones. That's a little bit beyond now. We go into absurd category with these types of things. So asking the first question, is this unprecedented? is this vilification against this community in some regards in the applications. And the fact is, not at all. There's a fascinating book, and I would encourage, if you all have the time or interest in what I'm presenting today, a book that I picked up called Fighting Traffic, The Dawn of the Motor Age in the American City. And this book asks the question, how did we become an automotive society? And looking at the case, that the great theme of the book is that before the city could be physically reconstructed for the sake of motorists, its streets had to be socially reconstructed as places where motorists unquestionably belonged. And now we apply that against drones. Some really interesting things that the lessons learned from the book. First, that automobiles, it's a common perception that automobiles were just accepted in America, and that tales of Henry Ford and the assembly line, and that society grabbed hold of the automobile immediately and went with it. And that could not be further from the truth. And in fact, quite the opposite happened. That in the time from 1900 to 1910, or the 1900s and the 1910s, automobiles were vilified. And the streets were regarded as places where, even though there were horses and carriages and whatnot, pedestrians walked, and kids played. And when the automobile was introduced, it was viewed as an intruder. That the automobile was not welcome on the streets. And there was a conflict of shared technologies. And the immediate public response was, we don't want them here. Legislation was enacted to throw the book at any auto-related accident, especially involving pedestrians. It did not matter what the pedestrian did. The automobile, in most regards, was always at fault. It wasn't until roughly the 1920s where the various automobile companies formed coalitions and organized. And they started to look at, let's not collectively look at this problem like shoving the automobile down people's throats, but let's go to the places where they're welcome. They selected a few cities. They started in places like Detroit, where they were welcome, and places where we're willing to rethink the concept of the city streets as not for pedestrians, but for automobiles, and build representative cases. And then once it got to the point where the automobile had enough adoption, then people could start to get out of the mindset that the automobile was in fact an intruder, and looking at more from the viewpoint of technological selection, which is what we all hope that this industry gets to. Logically looking at the fact that, for instance, using drones is a better, more efficient way to do various applications. And lastly, the automobile companies stayed the course. And quite clearly by the 30s and 40s, there were freeways and well, even into Eisenhower days, but that the whole concept of what a street represented was completely transformed and different. There was this concept introduced in the 1920s. You can actually find it in a lot of old papers, references to old papers, a concept called motordom. And it represented the automotive interests. It was the advocacy faction, per se, on these groups joining together and trying to enact a revolutionary change in how people view the street. So how does that translate to us in the drone generation. And first, I view the similarities in the automotive case and in drones to be staggering, and I think that if you took a look at the book, you would probably find that to be the case also. But the fact of the matter is that drones are not socially acceptable. And it is hard to even have a discussion with somebody otherwise because they view it immediately as an intruder and the fact that it does not belong. Of course, the defense perception amplifies that, but that's not the only reason. And drawing from historical references here, what should we do to expedite the advancement of these technologies? Well, in this historical case, start where the technology is welcome. This is one of the reasons that I view, for instance, markets like agriculture to be so inviting and so welcome, because they don't look at it with a privacy or surveillance point of view. What are you going to see? And they can look at it instead of that I have to spray less, which is socially acceptable. That they can fly low vehicles, they can fly vehicles replacing Cessnas and whatnot. They can fly cheaper, use less fuel, get better imagery. It's a win-win all around. And as we as a community begin to more effectively win in these types of areas, I think it's going to be very natural that people will see that the applications are not necessarily as killing machines and whatnot, and there are real advantageous applications. And frankly, maybe this is why we see a lot of the resistance, for instance, to law enforcement early on, and that was the greatest connection that I certainly made. And it makes us all in the community a little bit more sympathetic and understanding to the average person's concerns about what this technology is and what it might represent to those that don't necessarily understand it. Finally, there's another message, and that's about organizing. There's a lot of companies, a lot of people. You know, I talk to people in companies all the time, and they're always asking the question, why can't, why don't people want to use our stuff? Why is there such resistance to our stuff? You know, we just want to use this for X application and it's harmless. But they're not necessarily working with their competitors or, any number of other groups. I mean, there are certainly groups like AVSI, Silicon Valley Robotics. Andrea Key does a fantastic job in forming more of a community. But I do think it's time for businesses to work together more in building more educational coalitions per se to the value add for unmanned systems. And lastly, to stay the course. At this point, I have two more slides that I'm going to show, but I'm going to show them after questions. And maybe we'll take 2 more minutes. Yes?
Is your social acceptance finding applied around the world in other countries where there isn't such a strict legal officer?
That is a great question. And clearly there's not, right? I mean, that there are areas that are more socially acceptable. What the historical preference plays into is the fact that, and you're already seeing businesses here go to Australia and Canada and places where they can fly and they can do things. I do think that the successes in those communities are going to play into the representative examples to why the technology will ultimately be acceptable, but why those technologies are acceptable in those other communities and not here, I guess that's another question to be answered. Okay, one more chance. So, on an aside, what a great show that Patrick has put together, and Bruce. This has been fantastic. I've been involved with Patrick with the Silicon Valley chapter of ABSI for some time, and this is very exciting. I think to have a show focusing on the commercial side is great. But furthermore, after the end of this show, there's going to be more activities. I referenced earlier, more organization, more referenceable examples of unmanned systems being used. We're going to be looking into the possibility of having a local area concept of Robo Flight Academy, an educational program where kids, adults, it doesn't matter, fly drones, be in gyms. We're going to be going to places that are not controversial for flying them. And if you're interested, we're going to have Dave Lannon, who started the first Robo Academy up in Washington. On August 23rd, we're going to be posting more information on the Silicon Valley chapter website for ABSI. If anybody wants to talk to me, I'll be collecting some cards after the show. And I will make sure, as the information gets posted, that you get it. Here's another little background. There was just a Robo Flight Academy camp held up in Washington, a 2-week camp for kids, hosted by In-Situ ABSI Foundation and Google, to name a few. So I think that this is just the type of thing that would play really well these days. And if you'd like to be involved, I'd like to see you get involved. Thank you very much.